I suppose he would, especially in combination with his next point, which was that postmodern critics typically neglect looking closely and specifically at individual Enlightenment thinkers and their arguments against them. He said that it is characteristics of the hostile approach to view the Enlightenment as some kind of undifferentiated totality, giving the example of Gray's Enlightenment's Wake, which only mentioned Voltaire once, Rousseau once, and Diderot twice.
And with that, it's time for a word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm your sponsor, and this is a word. Philosophe, Enlightenment Rationalist and Skeptic. And that was tonight's word from your sponsor. Welcome back. Before the break, we were just about to begin commenting on Mason's thoughts on historians.
Indeed, Mason stated, their skeptical approach has been causing seismic disturbances not only in the field of Enlightenment literature, but also amongst historians at large. However, he remained positive that sanity is winning out in the world of historiography. He found Richard Evans encouraging when in his book Evans argued that the historian must strive to be as absolutely objective as possible or all is lost.
He next inquired as to what might be discovered from a closer look at the fundamental texts that form the basic viewpoints of the Enlightenment thinkers. He discussed a number of subjects such as Kant and epistemology, Lessing, Locke in his essay concerning human understanding, Beccaria in his treatise on crime and punishment, David Hume, Edward Gibbon, and Decline and Fall, and Jean-Laurent d'Alembert.
Oh yes, and he acknowledged particularly that the empiricist method was the method of choice for these and other philosophers. From there, Mason illustrated further issues between postmodern critics and Enlightenment philosophy, using Voltaire as a primary example and arguing against the postmodernist accusation of Eurocentrism.
He also argued in his speech that the essential stumbling block may well lie in the different constructs of reason in the Enlightenment age as compared with a postmodern world. As I have said, the belief in reason was on occasion too narrowly exclusive, but to go on from there to disown reason as a false guide incapable of attaining any truth whatsoever is quite another matter. He additionally cites philosopher Mark Hollis's notion of trust within reason as the best we have to work with, since there is no defense against fanatical beliefs save through an appeal to pondered thought.
Right, and he further maintained that the postmodern critique is caught in a self-referential contradiction, by quoting Terry Eagleton, who said, if it, postmodernism, rejects the external standpoint of Enlightenment rationality, it shares with the Enlightenment the fundamental trust in the moderately rational nature of human beings.
And what speech on the Enlightenment would be complete without a quote from David Hume? Mason explores Hume's thoughts on reason via his dialogues concerning natural religion, in which one character attacks human reason and its weakness, blindness, and narrow limits, only to have another character reply, whether your skepticism be as absolute and sincere as you pretend, we shall learn by and by when the company breaks up. We shall then see whether you go out the door or the window, and whether you really doubt if your body has gravity or can be injured by the fall.
Reason was right! Moving toward the tail end of the speech now, Mason discussed how Beatrice Didier debunked the critique that the Enlightenment eliminated the sacred from the world, and contrast this with some contemporary Romantic authors who supported introspective exploration as the way to transcendence. This differs from the Enlightenment, which operated in the public sphere, where authors saw the spread of knowledge as their duty in order to influence opinion.
Mason said this was the outlook of Jürgen Habermas, who acknowledged how important it is for writers to communicate to create links across cultures. Despite current-day disillusionment about Enlightenment optimism, Habermas asked himself the question that forms the essence of Mason's speech. Should we stick to the intentions of the Enlightenment even though they are fairly battered, or should we, as Mason stated, abandon the whole project of modernity?
Well, Habermas was explicit in his answer. As Mason summarizes, the Enlightenment is an incomplete enterprise, but unlike the negativity of postmodernism, it engages with the world while maintaining modest hopes that human emancipation from fear and superstition may yet continue.
Mason wrapped up the speech with a sentiment that, on the one side, we have become skeptical about larger slogans such as progress, tolerance, human rights, and yet they still matter dearly in those places where oppression, violence, and human contempt still prevail. Whew, that was quite a run-through.
Can't argue with that reasoning. Let's take a moment to talk about how our own evaluations of his speech. I found the words to flow smoothly and the course of the argument to be clear and well supported with evidence. Mason obviously is very well versed in his subjects.
I agree, though as you mentioned earlier, I definitely would have liked to have translations handy for the non-English quotations. Those online translators are no good for anything other than individual words, and even then they are often lacking.
I know, right? His use of English quotations to support his arguments functioned superbly, at the very least.
I couldn't agree more. Well, look at the time. That brings us to the end of tonight's episode of Historical Analysis Sock Puppet Theater. Please join us again next time for another enlightening journey through the intriguing world of historical analysis. Thank you, and have a most delightful evening.
Oh, sweet knees. Act of faith.
Right, and then...
Ball sex.